This is the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to thank Mark Mullet for joining us this evening and agreeing to allow us to conduct an interview for the race for state Congress. We have 8 questions.
I don't want to go back to DC. Oh my God, they're crazy back there.
We've got 8 questions we're going to be asking you today. We'll be asking your opponent the same thing at a future date. And we want to just make sure we have the information that our businesses are looking for to share with them. So when it comes time to vote, they are well informed. And so with that, Rob Young, who is on our Government Affairs Committee and on our coalition, has agreed to ask you those questions. And Joan is also on our Government Affairs, and she's chair of the East Side Coalition. She's going to be timekeeper. Last week we discovered that if we do a thumbs up, Joan, at 15 seconds, is that it? Okay, that'll be your cue. And I know you've done lots of these, and so if you want to start your own timer or anything like that, you may, but Rob will go over how much time you're being allotted for each question, etc. Okay. So I'm going to step away and I'm going to let you guys take it from here.
Hey, thanks, Kathy. Okay, Mark. Hey, we're going to allow 2 minutes, and Joan and I have figured out 3 minutes on the very last question, so that because it's more to it. Anyway, and Joan will do a thumbs up when there's 15 seconds. We'll all see it, and I believe I do see the recording button going on, Kathy. I see it on my end. Now I'm not sure I saw it before. So, anyway, Mark, first question. Tell us why you're running for this office, and the top 2 things that you want constituents to know about you as a candidate and that make you uniquely qualified for the position.
Okay, yeah. I'm running for the office because I personally have got a lot of satisfaction out of my time in public service. And that, for me, started on the Issaquah City Council back in '09, and then it continued when I was elected to the Senate in 2012. And that, for me, was kind of an experience I had as I graduated from Foster High School in Tukwila. I went away to do finance. I was working in London for UBS for 8 years, New York City for Bank of America for 5 years. My dad became the mayor of Tukwila, the town where I grew up in that time. And that's what, for me, was this epiphany I had, is if you want to have a positive impact in the lives of the people in your community, there's no better place to invest your time and energy in the local public service. And that was the example my dad kind of showed me. Even though he was a contractor when I was growing up, he didn't do any of this kind of stuff. I got it when I was living, on the other side of the country. So when I moved home, that was what inspired me to go to the Evans School and get a master's in public affairs and get more involved in public service. In terms of, I think, the qualifications I bring is I'm the only small business owner in the Senate Democratic caucus right now. I mean, there used to be 2. Guy Palumbo owned a dog kennel up in Maltby. He left last year, the Senate, and so you had 28 Senate Democrats. They're in the majority, but I'm the only one signing the front side of a paycheck every 2 weeks. And to me, that's important as we try to recover from COVID-19, to have someone in there who can explain the challenges and headaches that business owners, small business owners in our community are going through. And so for me, that's, I think, the perspective that I bring to that group, and I plan to bring if I'm reelected. And Joan, you didn't need to give me a thumbs up.
You made it by 1 second.
Oh, you never used your thing. You got to wave or something.
Okay. Okay, Joan will remember that next time. Thank you, Joan. Okay.
No, you made, it was 16 seconds.
I got it. Oh, I was a second away from getting.
No.
Okay.
So second question, Mark. Do you have business experience, and are you the owner of a business? And please include the largest budget and largest number of employees you've managed in your career.
Well, definitely my time in finance, when I was doing foreign currency trading, I was dealing with much bigger budgets than I am now in my pizza restaurant and ice cream store. So when I did foreign currency trading, I got promoted to managing director of Bank of America. And it was a big budget. I mean, it was a $100 million budget. We had staff in New York, London, and Singapore. I kind of had to travel around the world. It wasn't a great work-life balance, and I started having kids, hence the reason why I made the decision to move home back in 2006. But you know, that was still, I really enjoyed it. I mean, we were dealing with probably 150 staff members spread throughout the globe. It was a fairly large operation. My business life now, I was the franchise guinea pig for Zeke's Pizza. They were a local Seattle pizza chain that hadn't done franchising before. I opened up the Issaquah location back in 09. The same time, a year later, I did my first Ben & Jerry's store in Issaquah in 2010. And that's been interesting in the sense that, you know, at one point I had 90 employees between my 3 Ben & Jerry's, my 2 pizza restaurants. Currently with Zeke's, I'm down to just my Sammamish location. So I have 50 employees between Zeke's, Sammamish, and my 3 Ben & Jerry's in Kirkland, Bell Square, and Issaquah. But the budgets are obviously much smaller, but you're just more in the weeds of the day-to-day headaches of being a small business owner. I mean, it's kind of like I have that perspective I had from UBS and Bank of America at one end of the, you know, business spectrum. And then I currently have a very different perspective from pizza and ice cream, but I've enjoyed both of them. And I definitely have a better work-life balance. I can make my 4 kids work at Ben & Jerry's, which is great. So when they want money, they have to go work for it. I don't have to give it to them. So I couldn't do that at Bank of America, UBS.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Mark. Can you tell us what qualifications and leadership skills that you would bring to the legislature if elected?
Well, it was interesting. When I went to UW to do my master's in public affairs, this was back in 07, their whole premise of this master's in public affairs program was leadership through listening. It was kind of the idea that sometimes you just got to shut up and listen to people, because too many times politicians are talking, telling everybody what's going on, and then they don't actually get the feedback from the people they represent. So I thought, for me, that was a very powerful kind of core, you know, teaching objective that the Evans School Masters in Public Affairs program had, which resonated with me from day one when I got on the Issaquah City Council. And so I think for me, that's the perspective that I've tried to keep my whole time in the Senate, which is constantly just trying to listen to people. And what, you know, a great example I think of that was when I ran in 2012. You're out doorbelling in different neighborhoods in Maple Valley. They kept talking about this issue called the donut hole, which was this 40-acre parcel that King County owned in the middle of their city. And they were freaked out because the county wanted to zone it different than the rest of Maple Valley was zoned. They wanted to zone it like 100 homes per acre or whatever. And that was just me listening to the people as I was doorbelling. And I realized, wow, if I actually win the Senate race, this is like the first thing we have to go figure out. And so it was kind of cool in 2013 that my most important Senate bill that year was an issue I'd never even heard about a year before. It wasn't, you know, I wasn't solving the healthcare problems of the world, but, you know, we got a zoning issue figured out in Maple Valley that led to the new Tahoma High School being located smack in the middle of town, as opposed to 1,600 apartment units they didn't want. So that to me was definitely something that, yeah, not always talking. Sometimes you just got to shut up. That's how it works.
Perfect. Well, Mark, in your observation of the important work in Olympia, what key issues would you focus on your first year if elected?
Right now, this whole focus, we have to be laser focused on how to get small businesses back up and running. I mean, I think there's this huge disconnect right now between the stock market and small businesses. Like every small business owner I talk to, we're all freaking out. I mean, it's, you know, I look at my Ben & Jerry's stores. I did $140,000 in catering last summer. I did $12,000 this summer. I mean, you know, my Bell Square store, the sales in July were down 81% from what they were last year. And so I think we have to go into this upcoming session with a full acknowledgement that small business owners throughout our entire community are really having a hard time to put this puzzle together. And we have unemployment insurance rates are going to be going up next year. And so we have to be cognizant of that and make sure that the legislature is not coming in viewing small business owners as an ATM machine that they can just go to take a bunch of money out of to try to solve their budget challenges. And I think that's kind of my main priority going back to this session, is telling that story about the impacts we're going to have from unemployment insurance, the personal challenges I've had with my businesses in terms of the magnitude of the revenue drops that are something you can't even build into your budget forecast. Like for me, I freak out when sales year over year go down any amount. Like if they go down 10%, I'm losing sleep at night. I've never had a scenario where I thought one of my store's sales could go down 80% on a year-over-year basis. So I think that's definitely priority number one, making sure that Olympia is helping small businesses recover, not making their problems worse by hitting them with a bunch of new taxes.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for that, Mark. That was clear. Question number 5. The Issaquah Chamber is a catalyst and champion for the business community. Washington's economic competitiveness and the vitality of any community is reliant on healthy businesses of all sizes. Please share with us your opinion of where a decision in the legislature this past year supported businesses, and 2, that was number 1, and 2, had a negative impact on businesses.
Well, I think on the support side, one thing we did, and this was a drop in the bucket, but in March when we realized the magnitude of what was coming at us from COVID, we did realize that we needed to take some money out to help out on the healthcare side to make sure we had money there to buy personal protective equipment and all that stuff. At the same time, we realized that we're gonna have to put some money in the unemployment insurance trust fund to try to help it out, because we realized that there's gonna be a bunch of public health directives coming down on businesses that were gonna force layoffs. So we did make that installment in March, and I was one of the people who pushed for that. So of that $200 million that went out the last couple days of session, we did get $25 million for unemployment insurance to try to mitigate the rate impacts it would have on small business owners. That being said, we need to do 500 million to $1 billion of that. Like, we need to take a lot of our federal money now to really put that on steroids, when we get back down there, whether that's November or January. I think in terms of mistake, to me, it was, there in 2019, there was, an unnecessary B&O tax increase from 1.5% to 1.8% on the service industry. And my feeling on that is the B&O was already a challenging enough tax for a lot of these people, because it's not based on their profits, it's based on gross revenue. There's a lot of businesses that are on the margins, and when you raise the B&O tax, you're really getting them at the breaking point of not being able to ride it out. And I think that B&O tax increase in 2019, which could have been avoided, heading into what hit is actually making life even more difficult now for a lot of these people in the service sector. And so that was a big mistake, I think, on behalf of the 2019 session that I voted against.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Typically, 80% of the jobs in any given city are from small business, and most have been severely impacted or forced to close their doors as a result of this pandemic. So what changes, if any, do you see need to happen to support the economy to come out of this recession?
Well, I guess we just sort of touched on it a little, that, we have remaining federal CARES Act money in Olympia right now. And one of the calls I was on earlier today was with people involved in the unemployment insurance trust fund. And what we really have to do is to help businesses out. We have to prioritize some of that remaining federal dollars to push back as long as humanly possible, and hopefully avoid it entirely, us having to go take a loan out from the federal government to bail out our unemployment insurance system. I mean, the path we're on right now, it looks like they're applying for the federal loan to prepare to do that. The downside, and I don't think people realize this, is that federal loan's a 10-year loan document. And you basically lock in our business community into a set of unemployment insurance tax rates that now they're going to be stuck with until this loan is paid off. And to me, if you want to help this business community out, get out of this recession, the first thing we do is make sure we don't have to take out that federal loan to bail us out on the unemployment insurance. We have to take, a lot of states have done this. We have not, but other states have used their federal CARES Act money to make sure that they put some in their UI trust fund to defer having to take out the federal loan. And I think if we make that same decision, whether that's in a special session in November or the first week of session in January, we can have a huge help for the business community, because if we can avoid having to take that loan out, it'll definitely keep unemployment taxes a lot lower for the next 10 years.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. So Mark, what concerns you most as a citizen and a resident of Washington State about the lingering impacts of COVID-19?
I mean, I think you're going to have some job displacement. I guess front and center in my mind right now is the 787 line up in Everett. there's 30,000 people working in that building right now. And I think the downturn in aviation orders is going to, I don't know, I think we'll probably know in the next month what's going to happen. I mean, it seems like that line is going to move to South Carolina just because there's not enough jet orders to keep them both open. And so I'm like, it's stressful to think about those people. They're not tech workers. You know what I mean? These are people in the manufacturing sector. And so I think we've got to figure out through our community college, vocational system of what resources we have to put in to make sure those people get retrained so they can get back into the workforce as quickly as possible. We have to, I think, as a state, really look at how we try to retrain manufacturing jobs. I mean, in 2017, I voted to lower the manufacturing B&O rate down to the Boeing rate at the time, which was a preferential rate of 0.29 instead of 0.48. And, I was really frustrated. The governor actually vetoed that bill. It passed. I broke from my party to vote for it. And the governor vetoed it. And then, one of the headaches Boeing had this last time around with the World Trade Organization was they got in trouble for having this preferential rate different than the other manufacturers in Washington. I actually think we were on the right path back in 2017. That path is to acknowledge that our Constitution does not let us lure companies here with a gift of public funds. We can't promise them any bells and whistles to locate a manufacturing plant here. Our only lever that we have is make the tax rate on the manufacturing sector as competitive as possible so we don't lose a single one of those jobs in the next decade. And I think that's what has me a little nervous, is losing manufacturing jobs in our state.
Okay. So on this last question, Joan, Mark will have up to 3 minutes. And we'd like to leave this last question to you, Mark, open-ended so that you could speak directly to the business community. What would you like to share that maybe we should have asked during the interview, but we did not?
Well, I don't know how much I think it's more just the theme of what we've seen in our country in the last 10 years is this push to the extremes of the political spectrum. And it's happening on the far left and the far right. And when I first ran for the Senate in 2012, my whole promise to the voters in our district was, I'm in the middle of the political spectrum. I always said I'm fiscally conservative, I'm socially liberal, and I promise you I'm not going to get pulled to the far left. That was everyone's fear, is whatever party you're part of, is you're going to get pulled to the extremes of that party. And so that was a promise I made to voters in 2012. I honestly think that was the only reason I got reelected in 2016, is because I kept my promise. Is I stayed in the middle of the political spectrum. I did not get pulled. And the ironic thing is, I have a primary challenger in 2020 now from the far left for the exact reasons that I kept my promise for another 4 years, which was I did not get pulled to the far left. I stayed in the middle of the political spectrum. I think of the 49 legislative districts in the state of Washington, I think our district is the closest to the middle out of all of them. I think, I view us and maybe the Lake Stevens area, as the ones that are most in the political center. Obviously, you get the extreme far left in Seattle, and in Eastern Washington, you can find the extreme right. And I think my job is our district's in the middle. I need to represent those people. And that means sometimes I'm going to disagree with my own governor even. I mean, that's the reality of it. Is Inslee's had proposals like carbon tax proposals where I've had to tell the governor, hey, I know you're twisting my arm to vote for your carbon tax bill, but our district would not support that bill. And I think I felt validated when his carbon tax proposal went to the initiative and our district voted against it, 58%, 42%, that I did the right thing. I stood up for the people that I represent over partisan politics. And I think I just want people to understand I'm making the same promise for the next 4 years that I've made the previous 8, which is I'm in the middle. And I understand that's made my life politically difficult now because obviously I'm being challenged from the left, but I wouldn't change any of my decisions that I've made. I think they were made for sound policy reasons that people in the 5th legislative district would appreciate, because I was standing up for small business owners when I voted against the taxes. I was standing up for people, in our community who didn't want the carbon tax just to have all the money flow into the general fund so it could be bargained away in statewide collective bargaining. And I think I stood up for the values I think that our district represented, and I promised to do that in another 4 years. And I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Kathy, is there anything else you'd like to throw in there? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, Kathy's muted.
I'm
You
muted.
throw it in by a sign language.
I would like to thank Senator Mark Mullet for joining us this evening. I did not mention earlier, and I think it's important to know that we are not a partisan organization, that we're a business organization, and it's important for us to make sure that businesses get to hear the answers to these questions, because they are with our business hats on. You know, we all attend and listen in to different times that you're out there and campaigning for re-election, Mark, and sometimes I know we're wearing our personal hats and sometimes we're wearing our business hats, and so this is important to us to be able to hear from you and to share with the business community. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank Rob, and I want to thank Joan for being here to help us today. And with that, I'm going to